I assumed the ivory invitation to the Harbor Light Giving Gala was a peace offering, until my sister-in-law sent the follow-up text. My children were not welcome. She explained, because they were simply too pretty and would draw focus away from the donors. It sounded like a compliment wrapped in razor wire. I had spent 10 years smoothing over Vanessa's insults for the sake of family harmony, but the moment she targeted my daughter's self-worth, the peace treaty was officially over. The morning light in Seabridge always had a particular quality to it, a pale, washed-out gold that filtered through the salt spray off the Atlantic and settled heavy on the kitchen island. I stood there with a mug of coffee in one hand and a hairbrush in the other, watching the dust motes dance in that light, feeling a rare moment of perfect equilibrium. My daughter, Maya, who was 8 years old, sat on the high stool with her legs swinging, munching on a piece of toast while I worked a tangle out of her long, dark hair. Her brother, Leo, 6 years old and full of kinetic energy that never seemed to fully dissipate, was on the floor building a complex fortress out of magnetic tiles. "You are kind," I said, counting the brushstrokes. Maya swallowed her toast and recited the rest of our ritual without looking up. "I am kind, I am smart, I am important." It was a small thing, a silly thing perhaps to the outside world, but in the Ross household, it was armor. I wanted them to know who they were before the world tried to tell them otherwise. I finished the braid, tying it off with a silk ribbon that matched her school uniform, and kissed the top of her head. "Okay, beautiful. Go get your backpack." Leo looked up, his large brown eyes wide and earnest. "Am I beautiful too? Mom, you are the most handsome architect in the entire state of Massachusetts," I told him, crouching down to inspect his magnetic tower. "And you are kind, and you are smart." I watched them hustle out the door toward the waiting school bus, their laughter drifting back to me on the cool coastal breeze. They were good kids, not perfect. Of course, Leo still had meltdowns when he was tired, and Maya could be bossy when she felt insecure. But they were grounded, they were happy, and yes, they were undeniably striking. They had inherited their father's strong jawline and my dark coloring, a combination that often stopped strangers in the grocery store. I had learned to navigate those compliments with a polite smile, teaching the kids that appearance was just luck, while character was a choice. I did not know that by noon, that very luck would be weaponized against us. The mail arrived around 11. I was working from home that morning, editing copy for a boutique marketing firm called Brightwell Creative Studio. It was a good job, one that allowed me to use my degree while still being present for school pickups. But it required focus. When the mail slot clattered, I almost ignored it, but a heavy cream-colored envelope caught my eye. It was thick, expensive cardstock, the kind that cost more per unit than my weekly grocery budget. I recognized the calligraphy immediately. It was the same font my sister-in-law, Vanessa Hale, used for her Christmas cards, her dinner parties, and her carefully curated life. I opened it. The Harbor Light Giving Gala to benefit the Seabridge Community Fund, hosted by Mrs. Vanessa Hale. The Seabridge Glass House. September 24th. It was an invitation to the social event of the season. I felt a small flutter of excitement. The Harbor Light Gala was legendary in our town. It was where the old money of New England mixed with the new tech wealth seeping down from Boston. My husband, Ethan, had mentioned it weeks ago. He had said it was important for us to be there, not just for family solidarity, but because his family's construction business often relied on the goodwill of the people in that room. The invitation was addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Ethan Ross and family. I smiled. Family, that meant the kids, in previous years. The Harbor Light Gala had been a stuffy, adults-only affair, but I had heard rumors that Vanessa was pivoting this year. She wanted to showcase the future of Seabridge, aiming for a younger, more dynamic demographic. There were rumors of a carnival lawn for the children of donors, a way to encourage the 30-something millionaires to attend without needing nannies. I set the invitation on the marble counter, mentally scanning my closet for a dress that was elegant but not showy. something that would allow me to fade into the background while Ethan shook hands. That was my role in the Ross-Hale dynamic: the supportive wife, the quiet sister-in-law, the one who didn't cause waves. My phone buzzed against the granite. It was a text from Vanessa. "Ruby, darling, I see the invites went out today. I wanted to catch you before you RSVP. I typed back quickly. Got it. It looks beautiful. Van, we are excited." 3 dots danced on the screen. They lingered for a long time, long enough for the coffee in my mug to go cold. When the message finally popped up, the words felt like a slap. "So glad you and Ethan can make it. However, we are going to need you to leave Maya and Leo at home. I know the invite says family, but that is for the donor class. Trust me, it is better this way." I frowned, my thumbs hovering over the keyboard. I don't understand. I thought there was a youth program this year. Is there a capacity issue? Her reply was instantaneous. Not a capacity issue. It is an attention issue, to be brutally honest. "Ruby, your children are just too pretty. They draw the wrong kind of attention. I need the donors looking at the stage and the auction items, not cooing over how adorable your two are. It distracts from the mission. It would embarrass the family brand to have them turning the event into a pageant." I stared at the phone. I read the message once, then I read it again. The silence in the kitchen, usually so comforting, suddenly felt suffocating. Too pretty. She was banning my children because they were attractive? It was so absurd, so vain, that I almost laughed. But the second part of her message sank in like a hook. Embarrass the family brand, pageant. She was implying that I paraded them around, that their existence was a performance I was orchestrating to upstage her. My hands were shaking. I dialed her number. I was not going to do this over text. She answered on the second ring, her voice smooth and airy, as if she were greeting a donor. "Ruby, did you get my note?" "Vanessa," I said, keeping my voice level, forcing the tremor out of my throat. "I am reading it now. You cannot be serious. You are disinviting my children because they are, what, too cute? Oh, do not be dramatic." She sighed. I could hear the clinking of china in the background. She was likely overseeing a luncheon while destroying my peace of mind. It is not about being cute. It is about optics. This is a high-stakes night for me. "Ruby, the Harbor Light Fund is in a delicate place. We need absolute focus on the cause. And a 6-year-old building Lego blocks on the lawn is going to destroy the fundraising potential?" I asked. She lowered her voice, the warmth evaporating. "It is not just the Lego blocks. Ruby, it is the whole package. You know how people get around your kids. They fawn. They obsess. Oh, look at those eyelashes. Look at that hair. It sucks the air out of the room. Frankly, it is a little tacky. We want a serious atmosphere. Donor comfort is my priority. Having 2 children who look like they walked out of a casting call is distracting. It makes it look like we are trying too hard." "Trying too hard?" I repeated, baffled. "They are children. Vanessa, they look like that because they look like that. I do not put makeup on them. I do not style them. Well, maybe you should do less," she snapped. "Just tone it down. But that is beside the point. The rule is set. You and Ethan are welcome. The children are not. It is for their own good. Really, you do not want them to be objects of scrutiny. Do you?" She hung up before I could respond. I stood there for a long time, the dead phone pressed against my ear. The sun was still shining. The dust motes were still dancing, but the warmth had gone out of the day. It wasn't just the exclusion. It was the twisted logic of it. She had taken something innocent, my children's faces, and turned it into a sin. She had made their beauty a liability, something to be ashamed of, something to be hidden away so she could shine brighter. When Ethan came home that evening, the house was filled with the smell of roasted chicken, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. I waited until the kids were in the living room, watching a cartoon. Before I pulled him into the kitchen, I showed him the text. He read it, his brow furrowing. He was a good man. Ethan, he worked hard. He loved his family. and he carried the weight of the Ross name with a quiet dignity. But when it came to his sister, he had a blind spot the size of the Atlantic Ocean. He sighed, handing the phone back to me. "That is ridiculous," he said. "Thank you," I said, feeling a rush of relief. "I knew you would agree. I will tell her we are not coming if the kids aren't welcome." Ethan flinched. He turned to the sink and started washing his hands, scrubbing with more intensity than necessary. "Ruby, wait. We cannot just not go." "Why not?" I asked, the relief turning to ice. "She insulted our children." "Ethan, she said they are distractions. She basically called them show ponies. She is under a lot of pressure," Ethan said, his back to me. "You know how much this gala means to her. She has been working on it for 6 months. She is just paranoid about everything being perfect. It is not personal. It feels pretty personal." I said, "She told me I am making them into a spectacle. She is just jealous," Ethan said, turning around and drying his hands on a towel. "We both know that. She has she has always been insecure about looks. Why can't we just give her this one night? We get a babysitter, we go. We support the family business, we leave early. It is the path of least resistance." I looked at my husband. I saw the exhaustion in his eyes. I saw the desperate desire to avoid a conflict that would drag his parents, his aunts, and his business partners into a muddy feud. I saw the habit he had formed over 30 years, the habit of tilting the world to keep Vanessa steady. No matter who slid off the edge, he was asking me to flatten myself. He was asking me to accept the insult so he didn't have to deal with the fallout. "Fine," I said softly. Ethan exhaled, his shoulders dropping. "Thank you, honey. I knew you would understand. It is just one night." He kissed my forehead and went into the living room to wrestle with Leo. I stood in the kitchen, feeling a profound sense of loneliness. He thought we were a team, but in that moment, I realized that when it came to Vanessa, I was on the bench. The next morning, I dropped the kids off at school and drove straight to a small coffee shop on the edge of town to meet Tessa Lane. Tessa had been my best friend since college. She was a lawyer, sharp-tongued and fiercely loyal, the kind of person who would help you bury a body and then critique your shovel technique. I told her everything. I showed her the texts. Tessa stared at the screen, her mouth a tight line. She actually typed the words, "Too pretty?" Tessa asked. "She put that in writing?" "Yes. Save it," Tessa said immediately. "Screenshot it, back it up to the cloud." "Why?" I asked. "I'm not going to sue her." "No, but you might need a shield," Tessa said, handing the phone back. "Ruby, this isn't normal behavior. This is narcissism with a side of delusion. She is banning her niece and nephew because she is afraid they will outshine her at a charity event. That is sick, and if she is willing to say this to you, imagine what she is saying to other people to justify it. What do you mean? She cannot tell people she banned them because they are cute. She will look insane. So she is going to invent a reason. She is going to say they are badly behaved, or that you are difficult, or that there is some safety concern. You need to document this, not to attack her, but to protect yourself when the whisper campaign starts." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I had not thought of that. I had assumed Vanessa's vanity was a private vice, not a public strategy. "Do not internalize this," Tessa said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Your kids are wonderful. You are a great mom. This is her rot, not yours. Do not let her poison into your house." I nodded, but the poison was already seeping in. Later that day, at the Brightwell office, the reality of Tessa's warning hit me. I was sitting in a strategy meeting for the upcoming quarter when my manager, a sharp woman named Sarah, tapped a pen against the whiteboard. "We have a potential opportunity coming down the pipeline," Sarah said. "We are in talks with Vantage Bank. They are looking for a complete rebrand." My ears perked up. Vantage Bank was one of the primary sponsors of the Harbor Light Gala. I had seen their logo on the invitation. That is huge. I said, "It is," Sarah agreed. "And Ruby, I might need you to take point on this. I know you have family connections with the Hales. And Vanessa Hale is practically the face of Vantage's charitable arm right now. If we can leverage that connection, it could seal the deal. I felt my stomach drop. Vanessa wasn't just my sister-in-law. She was a gatekeeper to my career. If I made a scene about the gala, if I refused to go or caused a scandal, Vanessa could easily poison the well with Vantage Bank. She could whisper to the executives that I was unstable, unprofessional, or difficult to work with. I forced a smile. That sounds like a great opportunity. Sarah, I will look into it. I went back to my desk and stared at my computer screen. The trap was tighter than I had realized. It wasn't just social, it was financial. Vanessa had positioned herself at the intersection of my husband's business and my own career. She held all the cards. That evening, I had to do the hardest thing yet. I had to lie to my children. We were sitting at the dinner table. Ethan was late, held up at a site. So it was just the three of us. Maya looked up from her pasta. "Mom, are we going to the fancy party?" she asked. "The one with the glass house?" I took a sip of water. Buying myself a second, I could not tell her the truth. I could not tell an 8-year-old girl that her aunt thought she was too much, that her face was a problem. That kind of wound takes a lifetime to heal. "No, sweetie," I said, keeping my voice light. We looked at the details. And it turns out it is a very boring adult party. Lots of speeches and financial talk. You would be asleep under the table in 10 minutes. "But I have my blue dress," Maya said, her face falling. "We will find a better place to wear the blue dress. I promised. Somewhere fun. Somewhere where you can actually run around and play." Leo looked up, relieved. "Good. I hate speeches." Maya accepted it, but I saw the disappointment in her eyes. She had wanted to be part of the family event. She sensed, in that intuitive way children have, that she was being left out of something. I cleared the dishes, feeling a hot coal of anger burning in my chest. I was protecting them from the blow, but I was the one absorbing the impact. After the kids were asleep, I sat on the couch with my laptop, scrolling through my emails. A notification popped up. It was a forward from Ethan's Aunt Marjorie. Marjorie was a kind, fluttery woman who meant well but had never kept a secret in her life. Subject: FWD, Gala Etiquette and Updates. "Hi everyone. Vanessa asked me to pass this along to the extended family just so we are all on the same page for the big night. Can't wait to see you all. XOXO Marge." I opened the attachment. It was a glossy PDF, beautifully designed, listing the schedule, the dress code, and the parking instructions. And there, in a red box at the bottom of the page, was a new rule. Please note, in order to maintain the integrity of the donor experience and security protocols, no children under the age of 16 will be permitted on the premises. This policy will be strictly enforced. I scrolled back through my digital archives. I found the invitation from last year's gala and the one from the year before. Neither of them had this rule. In fact, 3 years ago, there had been a photo spread in the local paper of Vanessa posing with her friends' children at the event. This rule was new, and looking at the timestamp on the original email Marjorie had forwarded, it had been created yesterday. Vanessa had changed the policy specifically for me. She had codified her jealousy into an official regulation so she could hide behind rules if anyone asked. If I complained now, I wouldn't be the mother defending her kids. I would be the difficult relative trying to break the rules that everyone else had to follow. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. I closed the laptop. The room was dark. Save for the blue light of the screen, I heard Ethan's key in the door. He walked in, looking tired, dust on his boots. "Hey," he said softly, seeing me in the dark. "You okay?" "I am fine." I lied. I stood up. I had made a decision. I was not going to beg. I was not going to ask for an exemption. I was not going to give Vanessa the satisfaction of seeing me plead for my children to be accepted by their own family. I would go to the gala. I would wear the dress. I would smile at the donors. I would keep the peace for the sake of my children's innocence and my husband's sanity. But I was going alone, and I was going with my eyes open. Vanessa thought she had won. She thought she had silenced me with her optics and her rules. But she had made a critical error. She had shown me exactly who she was. She had revealed that her power was fragile, built on insecurity and control. I walked over to Ethan and kissed him on the cheek. "I am going to bed," I said. As I walked up the stairs, I didn't feel like the victim anymore. I felt like a witness. I was going to attend her party, but I wasn't going to celebrate her. I was going to watch her. I was going to understand why a grown woman was so terrified of two little children that she had to ban them from a building. And once I understood it, I was going to stop it. The invitation sat on the counter downstairs, elegant and chilly. I didn't need to look at it again. I knew the date, September 24th. I would be there, and I would be ready. 2 days later, I sat across from Ethan's Aunt Marjorie in a booth at the Salty Bean, a cafe that smelled perpetually of roasted hazelnuts and damp wool. Marjorie was the family historian, the keeper of birthdays, and the inadvertent leaker of secrets. She was 65, with hair dyed a defiant shade of chestnut and hands that fluttered like anxious moths whenever she was uncomfortable. Today, she was very uncomfortable. She stirred her Earl Grey tea for the 10th time, the spoon clinking rhythmically against the china. "It is just a difficult time for everyone," Marjorie said, avoiding my eyes. "You know how Vanessa gets. She wants everything to be perfect. She feels burdened." "Burdened by what?" I asked, taking a sip of my black coffee. "She has a committee of 12 women and a budget that could pave Main Street in gold. What is the burden?" "Marjorie?" Marjorie sighed, leaning in closer. The air of conspiracy settled over the table. "Well, do not tell her I told you, but the fundraising numbers are not where they should be. The economy, you know? People are tightening their belts, even the wealthy ones. Vanessa has been under immense pressure to match last year's total. If she doesn't, she thinks the board will vote her out as chair next season." I nodded slowly. That made sense. Vanessa treated the Harbor Light Community Fund less like a charity and more like a feudal kingdom. Losing the chair would mean losing her crown, but that does not explain why she is banning my children. I said, "If she needs money, wouldn't a family-friendly atmosphere encourage more donations? People spend more when they are happy, not when they are following strict rules." Marjorie looked down at her scone. "She is just erratic right now. Ruby, she has been making calls herself. Personally." I paused. That was odd. Vanessa Hale did not make cold calls. Vanessa Hale had people who had people to make calls. "She is calling sponsors?" I asked. "Yes," Marjorie whispered. "She was on the phone with the bank, then the real estate developers, then that luxury car dealership in Boston. Screaming, sometimes. Or pleading. It is very unseemly. I stopped by her house yesterday to drop off some jams, and she looked like she hadn't slept in a week. She barely let me in the foyer. She just kept saying she had to control the variables. I felt a prickle of intuition. Control the variables. My children weren't just kids to her. They were variables, unknowns, in a high-stakes game where she was already losing her grip. Anything she couldn't script, like a child's spontaneity or, apparently, their beauty, became a threat. She is terrified. I realized aloud. Marjorie nodded rapidly. "Exactly. So, you see, Ruby, it is not personal. She is just trying to hold it all together. If you could just give her this, be the bigger person. You are so good at that." I looked at Marjorie's pleading face. I was always the bigger person. I was so big I was practically a giant, stepping carefully over everyone's fragile egos so I didn't crush them. But being the bigger person was starting to feel a lot like being a doormat. "I will think about it." "Marjorie," I said. I left the cafe with a new piece of the puzzle. The Harbor Light Community Fund was not just a hobby for Vanessa, it was her leverage. In Seabridge, social standing was currency. If she failed to deliver the funds, her stock would plummet. She was desperate, and desperate people needed scapegoats. I drove toward the center of town, intending to pick up some groceries, but my mind was churning. I knew the Harbor Light Board. It was a Shark Tank disguised as a knitting circle. If Vanessa was personally hustling sponsors, it meant her committee had either failed or abandoned her. I pulled into the parking lot of the organic market, distracted, and nearly bumped into a cart being pushed by Kendall Pierce. Kendall was Ethan's second cousin, a woman who smiled with her teeth, but never her eyes. She was one of Vanessa's lieutenants, a soldier in the war for social dominance. "Ruby," Kendall chirped, blocking my path to the automatic doors. "I was just thinking about you." "Hi." "Kendall," I said, shifting my purse on my shoulder. "How are you?" "Oh, busy. Getting ready for the gala. Of course, it is going to be stunning. The floral budget alone is scandalous." She paused, tilting her head. "I heard about the situation with the kids," she said, her voice dropping to a sympathetic coo. I stiffened. Of course she knew. Vanessa would have broadcast it to the inner circle immediately to control the narrative. "It is unfortunate," I said neutrally. "We were looking forward to a family night." Kendall reached out and patted my arm. Her nails were manicured into sharp, red points. "You know, I totally understand where Vanessa is coming from. Though, it is hard for her. And honestly, Ruby, maybe it is for the best." "Excuse me?" "Well," Kendall said, leaning in, "I say this with love. But you do post a lot of photos of them, Maya and Leo. They are gorgeous, obviously. But sometimes, it feels a little much, like you're trying to prove something." I stared at her. I posted maybe once a week, usually pictures of them covered in mud or holding a drawing. "Trying to prove what?" I asked, my voice cooling. "Oh, you know, that they are perfect, that you have this perfect little life. Vanessa feels that, well, she thinks you use them to get attention, and bringing them to the gala. Dressed up? It would just look like you were trying to stage a moment." The ground seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Vanessa wasn't just banning them. She was triangulating. She was planting seeds in the family's minds that I was the problem, that I was the narcissist. She was projecting her own obsession with image onto me, twisting my motherly pride into vanity. If I protested the ban now, Kendall and the others wouldn't see a mother fighting for her kids. They would see an attention seeker throwing a tantrum because she couldn't show off her accessories. It was diabolical. "I see," I said, stepping back from Kendall's touch. "Thank you for telling me. Kendall, it is always good to know what is being said behind my back." "Oh, not behind your back," Kendall said, looking genuinely affronted. "We are family. We just want what is best for the dynamic. Maybe just tone down the Instagram for a few weeks? Let the heat die down?" I walked past her without another word. I didn't trust myself to speak. If I opened my mouth, I would have burned that bridge to the ground. And right now, I needed to cross it to get to the truth. I went back to work that afternoon, but my focus was shot. I sat at my desk at Brightwell, moving pixels around on a screen, while my mind replayed Kendall's words. You use them to get attention. Around 2:00, my office phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. "This is Ruby Ross," I answered. "Hi, Ruby. This is Nolan Red. From Vantage Bank." I sat up straighter. Vantage Bank, the sponsor Sarah had mentioned, the sponsor Vanessa was supposedly courting. "Hi, Nolan," I said, switching into professional mode. "How can I help you?" "Well, I am reaching out because we are finalizing the collateral for the Harbor Light Gala." He sounded harried, shuffling papers in the background. "Vanessa Hale mentioned that you were handling the alignment on the family side?" I frowned. The alignment on the family side? That wasn't a job title. That was word salad. "I am sorry. Nolan," I said slowly, "I am not sure what you mean. I am not working on the gala committee." There was a pause on the line, a long, heavy pause. "Oh," Nolan said. His voice went up an octave. "That is strange. Vanessa gave me your contact info. She said since you were with Brightwell, and you were family, you were going to help us smooth out the messaging. We have some concerns about the sponsor visibility. We were promised the center banner, but now we are hearing the architectural firm has it. Vanessa said you could fix it." My blood ran cold. Vanessa had sold me. She had told a major sponsor, a sponsor my firm wanted to land, that I was their fixer. She was using my professional reputation to plug the holes in her leaky boat. If the sponsorship went south, if Vantage didn't get their banner, Vanessa could shrug and say, "Well, I told Ruby to handle it. You know how she is." She was setting me up. I took a deep breath. I needed to tread carefully. This was my livelihood. "Nolan," I said, keeping my voice steady and warm, "I think there has been a miscommunication. While I am a supporter of the gala, I have no official role in the planning or execution. I cannot authorize banner placement or adjust sponsor agreements." "But she said—" Nolan started, then stopped. He sounded panicked. "She said you were the point person for the internal conflict resolution." Internal conflict resolution? What was she telling these people? "I am not," I said firmly. "However, if you have a request regarding Brightwell's potential partnership with Vantage in the future, I am happy to discuss that. But for the gala, you need to speak to the event coordinator or Mrs. Hale directly." Nolan let out a frustrated sigh. "I cannot get a hold of her. Ruby, she is dodging my calls. Look, we have $50,000 committed to this event. If the branding isn't right, $50,000? That was a massive sum for a local gala. No wonder Vanessa was frantic." "Nolan," I said, "listen to me carefully. Do not rely on verbal relays. If you have concerns about your contract, you need to email them to the board immediately. And as for my involvement, I need you to understand that I am not working for free, and I am not working without a contract. If Vanessa suggests otherwise—" "She is mistaken. I see," Nolan said. His tone had shifted from annoyed to wary. He realized he had stepped into a mess. "Okay, thanks. Ruby, I will send an email." He hung up. I sat there, my hand gripping the receiver. Vanessa was reckless. She was playing with people's money and my career to cover her own incompetence. She was drowning, and she was trying to use me as a life raft, or an anchor. I typed a quick email to myself, documenting the call. Date, September 14th. Time, 2:15 p.m. Subject, conversation with Nolan read, unauthorized use of my name. Tessa was right. I needed receipts. When I got home that evening, the house was quiet. The kids were already in pajamas, watching a movie. Ethan was in the kitchen, opening a bottle of wine. He looked tired, the lines around his eyes etched deeper than usual. "Hey," he said, pouring 2 glasses. "Rough day?" "You have no idea," I said, taking the glass. I didn't tell him about Nolan, not yet. I didn't want to panic him about the business connections until I had the full picture. But I could see he had something on his mind, too. He was pacing the small stretch of tile between the sink and the refrigerator. "I talked to Vanessa today," he said, not looking at me. "Oh?" I asked, leaning against the counter. "Did she ask if I had toned down my Instagram yet?" Ethan winced. "Don't start. Ruby, please. She wanted to make sure we were still on for the 24th, and she asked me to help you get ready." I lowered my glass. "Help me get ready?" I asked. "Like, zip my dress?" "No," Ethan said, turning to face me. He looked miserable. "She asked me to handle you." "Handle me?" "Yeah. She said she was worried you might make a scene. She wants me to make sure you are presentable, calm, that you understand the stakes." She used the word contained. I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my chest. It wasn't anger. It was heartbreak. My husband, the man who knew me better than anyone, had stood there and listened to his sister talk about me like I was a feral dog that needed to be muzzled. "And what did you say?" I asked. "I told her you were fine," Ethan said defensively. "I told her not to worry." "You told her I was fine?" I repeated. "Ethan, she asked you to suppress your wife. She asked you to treat me like a prop. Presentable. Contained. Did you tell her that I am a human being? Did you tell her that the only person causing drama is her? I just wanted to get off the phone." "Ruby!" Ethan exploded, slamming his hand on the counter. The wine in his glass sloshed over the rim. "I am sick of being in the middle. I have to work with her husband. My dad is breathing down my neck about family unity. I just want to get through one night without a war. The kids, I whispered, pointing toward the living room. Ethan froze. He took a deep breath, lowering his voice. I am sorry, he hissed, but you have to understand. It is complicated. It is not complicated. Ethan, I said, my voice shaking, it is actually very simple. Your sister is a bully, and you are letting her bully me because it is easier than standing up to her. She is family, Ethan said, as if that excused everything. So am I. I said, I am your family. Ethan, me, Maya, Leo, we are your primary family. She is your extended family. When did you forget the order? Ethan looked away, his jaw working. He didn't have an answer. He knew I was right. But the programming was deep. The Hale-Ross dynamic was built on the idea that Vanessa was the sun, and the rest of us were just planets hoping not to get burned. I put my wine glass down. I had lost my taste for it. I'm going to check on the kids, I said. I walked into the living room. Maya and Leo were curled up together under a blanket, the blue light of the television reflecting in their eyes. They looked so innocent, so unburdened by optics and sponsors and social leverage. I went upstairs to the guest room, which doubled as our storage space. I needed to find something. I wasn't sure what, exactly, but I felt a pull toward the past. I opened the closet and pulled down a dusty box of photo albums. I flipped through the pages. Our wedding, Maya's birth, Leo's first steps, and then I found it. It was a picture from 4 years ago, a summer barbecue at Vanessa's beach house. In the photo, Vanessa was sitting in a white wicker chair, holding a 2-year-old Leo on her lap. Maya was standing next to her, leaning against her knee. Vanessa looked radiant, smiling at the camera, but it was the caption I was looking for. I had printed out the Facebook post and tucked it into the album because, at the time, I had been so touched by her words. I slid the photo out of the plastic sleeve and turned it over. I had written the caption on the back, Vanessa Hale. So blessed to be the aunt to these two. They are storybook beautiful. Seriously. They should be in magazines. The most gorgeous kids in Seabridge. Love my niece and nephew. I stared at the handwriting. Storybook beautiful. Should be in magazines. 4 years ago. Their beauty was a point of pride for her. It was something she claimed. Something she used to garner likes and comments about being the glamorous aunt. So what had changed? The kids hadn't changed. They had just gotten older. What had changed was Vanessa. 4 years ago, she was secure. Her husband's business was booming. She had just been appointed to the board, and she felt on top of the world. My kids were accessories to her success. Now, she was drowning. She was aging. She was failing to raise the money. And suddenly, my children weren't accessories anymore. They were competition. They were reminders of youth and promise and effortless beauty, things she felt slipping through her fingers. It wasn't about distraction. It wasn't about donor comfort. It was about jealousy. Pure, uncut, green-eyed jealousy. She didn't want them there because looking at them made her feel less than. I put the photo in my pocket. This was my proof, not for a court of law, but for the court of my own conscience. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't attention-seeking. I was dealing with a woman who was projecting her own decline onto my children. I went back downstairs. Ethan was sitting at the kitchen island, his head in his hands. The wine bottle was still open. Ethan, I said. He looked up. His eyes were red. I am going to the gala, I said calmly. He let out a breath, a mixture of relief and shame. Okay, he said. Good. But, I continued, raising a finger, there are boundaries, 2 of them, and if you cannot agree to them, I am not going. Name them, he said. 1, I said. The children will not be mentioned, not by you, not by me, and certainly not by Vanessa. If she makes a snide comment, if she thanks us for following the rules, if she says anything about them being better off at home, you will shut it down. You will tell her to stop. Ethan nodded slowly. I can do that. 2, I said. If she humiliates me, if she treats me like a prop, if she snaps at me, if she tries to make me the punchline of some joke to entertain her donors, we leave. Immediately. No goodbyes, no excuses. We walk out the door. Ethan hesitated. He was imagining the scene, the awkwardness, the questions from his father. Ruby. That is extreme. It is self-respect. Ethan. I said, I am willing to show up. I am willing to stand by your side, but I am not willing to be her punching bag to help her feel powerful. Take it or leave it. He looked at me. He saw the steel in my spine. He saw that the woman who used to smooth things over was gone, replaced by a mother who had drawn a line in the sand. Okay, he whispered. Okay, I promise. I nodded. Then we are going to the gala. I turned and walked away, leaving him in the kitchen. I touched the photo in my pocket. I had the truth. I had the receipts. And I had a plan. Vanessa wanted to control the variables. She had just invited the one variable she couldn't control. The week leading up to the gala was a blur of quiet preparation. I worked my hours at Brightwell, carefully avoiding any new projects that involved Vantage Bank. I dodged calls from Kendall Pierce. I kissed my kids extra hard every morning, and I watched. I watched Vanessa's social media. She was posting frenetically now. Blurry photos of flower arrangements, inspirational quotes about community, manic selfies with board members who looked tired. Can't wait to see everyone at the Glass House, she wrote. It is going to be a night of elegance and focus. Focus. That was her buzzword. She was trying to manifest control, but I could see the cracks. I could see the desperation in the multiple exclamation points, the late-night timestamps on her posts. I went to my closet and pulled out my dress. It was a deep emerald green. Silk, floor length. It was simple, but it fit me perfectly. It was a dress that didn't need to shout to be heard. I held it up against my body in the mirror. I wasn't going to hide. I wasn't going to fade into the wallpaper. I was going to walk into that glass house, and I was going to hold my head high. I thought about Nolan Red and the missing $50,000 of value. I thought about the internal conflict resolution role I never signed up for. I thought about the too pretty text message saved in the cloud. The pieces were all there, the shaky finances, the lies to sponsors, the triangulation of family, the jealousy. Vanessa had built a house of cards on a foundation of insecurity. All it would take was a breeze to knock it down. And on September 24th, the wind was going to blow. I put the dress back in the bag. I went to check on the kids one last time. Leo was asleep, one arm hanging off the bed. Maya was murmuring in her sleep. I love you, I whispered. I was doing this for them, to show them that you don't let people shrink you. You don't let people edit you out of the picture because you shine too bright. I went to bed, lying next to Ethan, who tossed and turned all night. He was dreading the gala. I wasn't. I was ready. The stage was set. The players were in position. And Vanessa Hale had no idea that the prop she had invited was about to become the protagonist. We would see who taught whom a lesson. The atmosphere in Seabridge changed in the weeks leading up to the gala. The air grew crisper. The leaves on the maples turned a violent shade of red, and the silence from my in-laws became deafening. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of a held breath before a scream. Vanessa did not contact me directly after I set my boundaries with Ethan. Instead, she took to the digital pulpit. It started on a Tuesday morning. I was scrolling through Instagram while waiting for the kettle to boil. And there it was. A story on Vanessa's feed. It was a text-only post, set against a background of tasteful beige linen. So grateful for parents who understand that childhood is about innocence, not exhibitionism. It breaks my heart to see mothers who exploit their kids' looks for likes. Let them be little, not props. There was no name attached. There didn't need to be. The timestamp was 2 hours ago. I stared at the screen, the steam from the kettle rising around my face. Exhibitionism, props. She was taking the exact words I had used to describe her behavior, treating my husband like a prop, and twisting them to paint me as the villain. She was projecting so hard she was practically a cinema screen. I didn't like the post. I didn't comment. I just let it sit there, knowing that every cousin, aunt, and mutual friend in Seabridge was reading it and doing the mental math. The fallout was subtle but immediate. Later that day, I sent a text to Ethan's cousin, Sarah, asking if their kids wanted to meet at the park on Saturday. Sarah usually replied within minutes. This time, 6 hours passed. "Hey, Ruby, we are swamped this weekend. Maybe next month?" Next month, after the gala, after the dust settled, they were pulling away. They didn't want to be caught in the blast radius. Vanessa was the queen bee, and in a small town hierarchy, you didn't sit at the table with the exile. I felt a pang of hurt, sharp and deep. These were people I had spent Christmases with. People who had held my babies when they were newborns, and now, because Vanessa had decided to rewrite reality to soothe her own insecurity. I was radioactive. I looked at Maya and Leo, who were oblivious to the Cold War being fought over their heads. They were sitting on the living room rug, arguing over which color crayon was superior, blue or green. I will not let this touch them, I vowed. That evening, I called Tessa. "I need a favor." I said, "Name it." She answered. I saw the post. "Ruby, I am currently drafting a comment that will scorch the earth, but I haven't hit send yet. Do not hit send." I said quickly, "Do not engage. That is what she wants. She wants a catfight. She wants me to look unstable so she can point and say, 'See, I told you she was drama.'" "Smart," Tessa admitted. "So what do you need?" "I need you to take the kids on the night of the gala." I said, "Vanessa made it clear they are not welcome. I am not going to leave them with a random babysitter while I go into the lion's den. I want them to have the best night of their lives. I want them to associate September 24th with joy, not exclusion." "Done," Tessa said. "I will take them to the Boardwalk Arcade. We will eat pizza until we explode. We will win terrible prizes. They won't even know you are gone." "Thank you," I said, feeling the knot in my chest loosen slightly. But the war wasn't just social. It was creeping into the one place I thought was safe: my job. 2 days later, at Brightwell, I was called into Sarah's office again. Sarah was a pragmatist. She liked clean lines and profitable quarters. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses, tapping a folder on her desk. "Ruby, we need to talk about the Vantage account," she said. I sat down, bracing myself. "We are moving forward with the pitch," she said, "but I'm going to have Jason lead the presentation." Jason was a junior associate. He was talented, but he didn't have my experience. "Why?" I asked, keeping my voice level. I wrote the strategy. "Sarah, I know the client. I know," Sarah said, looking uncomfortable. She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Look, Ruby, I am going to be honest with you. Vantage is sensitive right now. They are heavily involved with the Harbor Light Gala. As you know, there has been some noise." "Noise?" I asked. "We have heard through the grapevine that there is some friction within the Hale family," Sarah said. "And since Vanessa Hale is the face of the gala, and the gala is Vantage's pet project this quarter, well, the client has intimated that they want a neutral face for the campaign. They are worried about image. They don't want to be dragged into any personal messy narratives." I felt the blood drain from my face. Vanessa had done it. She hadn't just gossiped to her bridge club. She had poisoned my professional reputation. She had painted me as messy to a major financial institution, likely during one of her desperate phone calls to secure funding. "I understand," I said, my voice tight. "Image matters." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "It is just for now. Ruby, once the gala is over, things will blow over." I walked back to my desk, my hands trembling. This was no longer just a family spat. This was an attack on my livelihood. Vanessa was willing to take food off my table to protect her fragile ego. I needed air. I grabbed my purse and walked out of the office, driving aimlessly until I ended up at the Roasted Bean, a high-end coffee shop near the marina. It was the kind of place where a latte cost $8 and the clientele wore cashmere in September. I stood in line, staring at the pastry case, trying to calculate my next move. Behind me, I heard a voice. It was sharp, distinct, and dripping with amusement. And then she told me the sister-in-law's kids were banned. Can you imagine? I froze. Another voice, younger, giggled. Why? Are they monsters? No. Darling, that is the best part. Vanessa told the committee they were too pretty. She actually said it. She said they were a distraction to the serious nature of the event. I gripped the strap of my purse. I recognized the voice now. It was one of the committee members, a woman named Bitsy, who followed Vanessa around like a golden retriever. The younger woman laughed. That is rich coming from Vanessa. Didn't she spend $10,000 on Botox last year? Shh, Bitsy hissed. Anyway, it is a scandal, but Vanessa is spinning it as a security issue now. She says the mother, Ruby, is a bit unhinged, obsessed with fame. My vision blurred at the edges. Unhinged. Excuse me. A deep, resonant voice cut through the chatter. I turned. So did Bitsy. Standing at the condiment station, stirring sugar into a black coffee, was Celeste Marlowe. Celeste was a legend in Seabridge. She was a philanthropist in the truest sense of the word. She didn't just write checks. She built wings of hospitals. She was 70 years old, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and a posture that could command a boardroom. She had been on the Harbor Light board for 20 years. She looked at Bitsy with an expression of mild distaste, as if she had found a fly in her soup. Did I hear you correctly? Celeste asked. Vanessa Hale banned children from a family charity event because of their physical appearance? Bitsy turned a shade of pale usually reserved for uncooked dough. Oh, Celeste, I didn't see you there. I was just repeating what I heard. You know how rumors are. I do know how rumors are, Celeste said, her voice cool and smooth like polished stone. They are usually the smoke from a fire someone is trying desperately to hide. And did you say she called the mother unhinged? Well, that is just the talk, Bitsy stammered. Celeste turned her gaze toward me. She didn't know me well. We had met in passing at previous events. But she looked at me now with a sudden, piercing recognition. She saw the tension in my shoulders. She saw the way I was standing, frozen, trapped in the conversation. Ruby Ross, isn't it? Celeste asked. Yes, Mrs. Marlowe, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Celeste turned back to Bitsy. I suggest you stop repeating that story. Bitsy, it makes the organization look petty. And frankly, it makes you look bored. Bitsy mumbled an apology and scurried out of the shop with her latte, leaving a wake of awkward silence. Celeste picked up her coffee and walked over to me. Buy you a drink? She offered. 10 minutes later, we were sitting at a small iron table on the patio. Overlooking the harbor, the wind was brisk, but the sun was warm. I am sorry you had to hear that, Celeste said, placing her cup down precisely. It is nothing I haven't heard before, I said, wrapping my hands around my mug. Though hearing it from a stranger is a special kind of humiliation. Celeste studied me. She had eyes that were the color of sea glass, sharp and assessing. I have known the Hales a long time. Celeste said, I knew Vanessa when she married your husband's brother. She was always ambitious. But this is new. She is under pressure, I said, repeating the family mantra. Celeste let out a dry, short laugh. Pressure. That is one word for it. Do you know why she is under pressure? Ruby? I shook my head. Marjorie said something about fundraising numbers. It is not just the numbers, Celeste said, leaning in. It is the pledges. I sit on the Finance Oversight Committee. Vanessa has been promising a platinum sponsor package to the board for 3 months. She claims she has $100,000 locked in from a mysterious donor. She keeps delaying the paperwork. $100,000? I asked. Yes, and without it, the fund is in the red for the year. We are starting to suspect the donor doesn't exist. We think she made it up to get elected chair, hoping she could hustle the money before the gala. Now the deadline is here. The money isn't, and she is panicking. The pieces click together, the frantic calls to sponsors, the attempt to use me to smooth things over with Vantage Bank, the obsession with distractions. She is building a facade, I said, and she is using your children as sandbags to shore it up. Celeste finished. She needs the gala to be a sterile, controlled environment where she can charm the money out of people's pockets. Your children, beautiful, vibrant, alive, they are uncontrollable variables, and right now, Vanessa cannot handle anything she cannot control. I looked at Celeste. Why are you telling me this? Because I despise bullies, Celeste said simply, and I despise incompetence even more. Weaponizing rules against children to cover up financial fraud? That is a line I will not see crossed in my organization. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small notepad. You are going to the gala? She asked. Yes, I said. Alone. Good. Celeste said. Listen to me. Ruby, do not confront her privately. She will lie. She will gaslight you. She will tell you that you are crazy. You need to fight her with paper. Paper? Keep a timeline. Celeste instructed. Write down every interaction, every text, every time she changes a rule. Collect the emails. Did she put the ban in writing? Not explicitly. I said. She sent a text, and then she updated the etiquette guide. Get more, Celeste said. Ask questions in writing. Force her to commit to her lies on the record. When the house of cards falls, and it will fall, Ruby, you want to be standing outside the rubble holding the blueprints. I nodded, feeling a surge of adrenaline. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was an investigator. Thank you. Celeste. She stood up, adjusting her silk scarf. Don't thank me yet. Just show up on the 24th. And wear something fabulous. The best revenge is living well. But the second best is looking better than your enemy while she implodes. She walked away, leaving me on the patio with a new sense of purpose. I went home and opened my laptop. I created a folder labeled Gala Correspondence. I started a document. Timeline of events. August 28th. Initial invitation received. Family included. August 29th. Text from Vanessa banning children. Too pretty. September 2nd. Etiquette guide updated to exclude children. September 14th. Call from Nolan Red, Vantage Bank, regarding unauthorized roll. I was building a case, but the emotional toll was still mounting. That night, the phone rang during dinner. Ethan looked at the caller ID and grimaced. It is my dad, he said. He put it on speakerphone, a habit from years of family calls. Hi. Dad, Ethan said, spearing a piece of broccoli. Ethan, Graham Ross's voice boomed through the kitchen. How are you? Son, are we all set for the big night? We are getting there, Ethan said, glancing at me. Good, good. Listen, I was talking to Vanessa. She is worried about Ruby. I stopped eating. My fork hovered halfway to my mouth. Worried? Ethan asked. She says Ruby is taking this whole kids thing very hard. Graham said. Says she is being a bit sensitive. Look, Ethan, you need to get her in line. We cannot have a long face at the family table. It looks bad. We need to stand by family. Vanessa is working her tail off for this. Ethan looked at me. He saw the fire in my eyes. He saw the restraint it was taking for me not to scream. Dad, Ethan said, his voice straining. Ruby is fine. She is supporting the event. She better be. Graham grumbled. We do not need drama. Tell her to toughen up. It is just a party. Ethan hung up. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. Stand by family, I repeated quietly. That is their code, isn't it? It doesn't mean support each other. It means support the lie. Ethan put his head in his hands. I hate this, he whispered. I know. I said. I stood up and cleared the plates. But hating it isn't enough. Ethan, eventually, you have to choose which family you are standing by. 2 days later, the mail arrived. It was a large packet from the Gala committee, containing the finalized schedule and the seating chart. I opened it at the kitchen island. I unfolded the large, glossy map of the Seabridge Glasshouse. The tables were numbered 1 through 30. Table 1 was the head table, right in front of the stage. That was for the Hales and the biggest donors. I scanned the chart, looking for Ross. I found it. Table 29. I traced the number with my finger. Table 29 was in the back corner of the room. It was wedged between the entrance to the kitchen and the emergency exit. It was as far away from the stage and the cameras as you could possibly get without being in the parking lot. I looked at Table 1, Vanessa Hale, Graham Ross, Marjorie Hale, even Kendall Pierce was at Table 4. We had been demoted. This wasn't logistics. This was a message. Vanessa was putting me in the penalty box. She was hiding me near the service door so I wouldn't ruin her aesthetic. She was telling the entire room that the Ross family was second class. My first instinct was to cry. It felt so high school. It felt so incredibly mean. But then I remembered Celeste's voice. Fight her with paper. I didn't cry. I walked to my computer. I looked up the contact information for the event coordinator, Lila Fenwick. I had met Lila once. She was 24. Eager to please, and terrified of Vanessa. I composed an email. I kept it polite, professional, and deceptively innocent. Subject: clarification regarding seating and policy. Dear Lila, I received the seating packet today. Thank you for all your hard work. I noticed we are seated at Table 29. I just wanted to confirm that this is correct, as my husband's parents are at Table 1. I assume this is to facilitate the service flow? Also, for my own records, could you please confirm the date the No Children policy was instituted? I seem to recall previous years being open to families, and I want to make sure I didn't miss a memo earlier in the year. I would hate to be out of the loop for future events. Best, Ruby Ross. I hit send. I waited. Lila replied within 20 minutes. I could practically hear her anxiety through the screen. Hi, Mrs. Ross. I am so sorry about the seating. Mrs. Hale finalized the chart personally yesterday morning. She instructed that Table 29 was best for your party due to logistical spacing. I cannot move anyone without her approval. Regarding the policy, the No Children rule was added on August 29th. Mrs. Hale requested the change be made to the etiquette guide immediately. It applies to this year only, per her verbal instruction, to ensure a streamlined donor environment. I hope this helps. Lila. I stared at the screen. August 29th, the same day she sent the text. This year only. There it was. Written confirmation from the event coordinator. The rule wasn't a board decision. It wasn't a venue policy. It wasn't a security protocol. It was a personal order from Vanessa Hale, executed the moment she decided my children were a threat to her spotlight, and explicitly temporary so she could bring her own friends' kids back next year. She had codified her jealousy. I printed the email. I 3-hole punched it. I placed it in the binder next to the screenshots. I looked at the seating chart again. Table 29, the table by the kitchen, the table where the trash was taken out. She thought she was hiding me. She thought that by shoving me in the corner, she could silence me, but from the back of the room, you can see everything. You can see who is whispering. You can see whose hands are shaking. You can see the structure of the room before it collapses. I closed the binder. I picked up my phone and texted Tessa. The arcade plan is a go. Make sure they eat so much sugar they vibrate. Tessa replied instantly with a salute emoji. I walked into the living room. Ethan was watching the news, looking detached. I found out why we are at Table 29. I said. He looked up. Wary. Why? Because the lighting is bad there, I said, and Vanessa doesn't want anyone to see us. Ethan sighed. Ruby, please. But it is okay, I said, cutting him off. I smiled, and it was a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It is perfectly okay, because I don't need a spotlight to be seen. Ethan, and neither do you. I walked past him and went to check my dress one last time. The gala was 3 days away. Vanessa had her platinum sponsor that didn't exist. She had her fake rules. She had her seating chart designed to humiliate. She had everything she needed to destroy herself. All I had to do was show up and let her. September 24th arrived with a sky the color of bruised slate. The kind of New England gray that promises a storm but holds it back just to keep you guessing. I woke up with a sensation that was less like anxiety and more like clarity. The fear that had been gnawing at my stomach for weeks had crystallized into a cold, hard resolve. I spent the morning in motion. I cleaned the kitchen counters until they gleamed. I organized the mudroom. I did things that had beginnings, middles, and ends, small tasks I could control, because I knew that by 7 o'clock that evening, I would be walking into a situation where control was an illusion. I rehearsed my lines in the bathroom mirror while applying my makeup. I am here to support the cause. It is wonderful to see so many people here for the community. The children are having a wonderful time with their aunt. I said them over and over, flattening my tone, stripping away any edge of sarcasm or hurt. I had to be a gray rock. If Vanessa wanted a reaction, if she wanted tears or anger or a scene she could use to paint me as the hysterical sister-in-law, I was going to starve her. I would be polite. I would be boring. I would be unshakable. At 4 o'clock, Tessa Lane pulled into the driveway. Her SUV was already vibrating with bass, and she jumped out wearing a neon-bright windbreaker that seemed to scream joy. "Auntie T is in the house," she shouted, throwing open the front door. Maya and Leo came running, their earlier disappointment about the boring adult party completely forgotten. We had sold the alternative plan well. Tonight was not a night of exclusion. It was the night of the arcade. "Okay, listen up," Tessa told them, dropping to one knee. "I have $50 in quarters. I have a stomach ready for pepperoni pizza. And I have a strict rule that we do not go home until we have won at least 3 terrible stuffed animals. Are we agreed?" "Agreed," Leo screamed. Tackling her, I watched them, my heart aching with a fierce, protective love. They were so happy. They were safe. They were far away from the toxic geometry of the Seabridge glasshouse. Tessa looked up at me over Leo's shoulder. Her eyes were serious. "You got this. Ruby," she said, "do not let them see you bleed. I am wearing armor," I said, touching the silk of my dress. Tessa squeezed my hand. Then she herded the kids out the door. I stood in the hallway, listening to the silence settle back over the house. It was time. I put on my coat. I picked up my clutch. Inside, tucked next to my lipstick and my phone, was a folded copy of the email from Lila Fenwick confirming the policy change. I drove to the venue alone. The Seabridge glasshouse was a stunning piece of architecture, a jagged shard of crystal jutting out over the dark water of the harbor. Tonight, it was lit from within by thousands of amber lights, glowing like a beacon of wealth and influence. Valets in white jackets were sprinting back and forth, parking Bentleys and Teslas. I handed my keys to a young man who looked terrified of scratching the paint. Even though my car was a sensible sedan amidst the parade of luxury, I walked up the long, illuminated gangway toward the entrance. The check-in desk was manned by 2 security guards and 3 event staff members who were furiously typing on iPads. The air smelled of expensive perfume and the salt of the ocean. I approached the desk, my head held high. "Name?" the guard asked. He was a large man with a headset, his eyes scanning the crowd over my shoulder. "Ruby Ross," I said. He looked down at his list. He ran his finger down the R's. He stopped. He frowned. Then he tapped his earpiece. "Hold on," he muttered. He looked back at me, his expression shifting from bored to suspicious. "Ma'am, could you step to the side for a moment?" My pulse kicked against my ribs. "Is there a problem?" I asked, keeping my voice pleasant. "Your name is not clearing for the VIP lounge access," he said loud enough for the couple behind me to hear. "I have a flag here. I need to verify your credential." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. This was it. The first trap. Vanessa had flagged me at the door. She wanted me to get flustered. She wanted me to argue with security while the donors walked by. Witnessing Ruby Ross being detained like a gatecrasher, I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. "I understand," I said calmly. I stepped out of the line, allowing the couple behind me, the CEO of a local biotech firm and his wife, to pass. They gave me a pitying look. I pulled out my phone. I dialed Lila Fenwick. She answered on the first ring, sounding breathless. "Lila?" I said. "It is Ruby Ross. I am at the entrance. Security is telling me I have a flag on my credential. I assume this is a system error. Given our email correspondence earlier this week?" There was a panicked silence on the other end. "Oh no," Lila gasped. Oh God. Vanessa said I will be right there. Please do not leave. I hung up and waited. I stood with my hands clasped in front of me, a portrait of patience. The security guard kept side-eyeing me, waiting for me to snap. I just smiled at him. 2 minutes later, Lila came sprinting across the lobby in her heels. She looked pale, her headset askew. "I am so sorry," she said, breathless. She turned to the guard. "She is cleared. She is absolutely cleared. It was a database glitch. Let her in immediately." The guard looked confused. "The note says, pending review by host." He argued. "Override it." Lila snapped, her voice cracking. "Mrs. Ross is a guest." The guard shrugged and unhooked the velvet rope. "Thank you, Lila," I said softly. "I appreciate you sorting that out." Lila looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. She knew exactly what had happened. She knew Vanessa had tried to stage a humiliation, and she knew I had just sidestepped it by using her as my shield. "Please enjoy the evening, Mrs. Ross," she whispered. I walked into the main hall. The room was breathtaking, a cavern of glass and steel draped in white silk. Massive floral arrangements of white hydrangeas and orchids towered over the tables. A string quartet was playing something classical and soothing in the corner. But as I walked deeper into the room, the cracks began to show. I took a glass of sparkling water from a passing waiter and moved toward the perimeter, observing. My eyes, sharpened by weeks of suspicion, caught details that others might have missed. The large banner hanging behind the stage, announcing the Harborlight Community Fund, had a ripple in the fabric. I looked closer. The word community was slightly off-center, as if it had been printed hastily, and in the bottom corner, the logo for Vantage Bank was pixelated, as if someone had pulled a low-resolution image off Google instead of using the official vector file. I frowned. Vantage was a $50,000 sponsor. They would have sent high-quality assets. Why was the banner so cheap? I walked past a station displaying the silent auction items. There were QR codes next to each item for mobile bidding. I scanned one with my phone just to see the interface. It didn't lead to a secure auction platform. It led to a generic PayPal landing page titled Hail Events Processing. I stared at my screen. Hail Events Processing? Not Harborlight Fund? Not a registered 501c3 donation portal? I screenshotted the page. I continued my lap. I passed a cluster of servers near the kitchen doors, right near table 29, my exiled seat. They were whispering furiously. "Told us cash only at the end of the night." One waiter muttered, "I know, but the agency said the check bounced last week." The other replied, "If I do not get paid tonight, I am walking out before dessert." I kept walking, my heart hammering a slow, heavy rhythm. It was worse than Celeste had suspected. This wasn't just missing pledges. Vanessa was insolvent. She was running this gala on fumes and promises, likely using tonight's donations to pay yesterday's vendors. It was a Ponzi scheme of social capital, and she had banned my children because she needed absolute control over this fragile ecosystem. One pull on the wrong thread, and the whole tapestry would unravel. "Ruby!" The voice was bright, brittle, and unmistakable. I turned. Vanessa was gliding toward me. She wore a dress of gold sequins that looked heavy, like armor made of coins. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it pulled at the corners of her eyes. She was smiling, but her eyes were darting around the room, checking the angles, checking the audience. "Vanessa," I said, allowing her to lean in for an air kiss. "You look stunning." She pulled back, her hands resting on my shoulders. Her grip was tight. "And look at you," she exclaimed, her voice pitched loud enough to carry to the nearby group of donors. "You are here, and you are alone." She laughed, a tinkling, artificial sound. "It is so nice to see you like a grown-up for once." "Isn't it?" she said, beaming at me. "Without the accessories, you look so much more relaxed without having to manage the circus." The insult landed in the air between us. She was calling my children a circus. She was implying I was usually childish. She was waiting for me to defend them. She was waiting for me to say, My children are not accessories. If I said that, she would pat my arm and say, "Oh, honey, do not be so sensitive," and everyone watching would see the defensive sister-in-law. I didn't take the bait. I smiled back, a genuine, warm smile. "I am certainly happy to be here." "Vanessa," I said, my voice clear and calm, "it is such an important night for the mission, with the fundraising goals being so ambitious this year." I agreed that we needed to focus entirely on the financial health of the organization. Nothing is more important tonight than the transparency of the cause. Vanessa's smile faltered. A flicker of panic crossed her face. I had used her own logic against her, but I had laced it with words that terrified her. Financial health, transparency. "Yes," she stammered. "Exactly. The mission." A woman standing nearby, a wealthy matriarch of a local fishing dynasty, nodded approvingly. "That is a wonderful attitude." "Dear," the woman said to me, "so many people forget it is about the charity, not the party." Vanessa looked trapped. She couldn't insult me because I was agreeing with the mission. She couldn't attack me because the donors were nodding. "Well, enjoy the evening," Vanessa said, pulling her hands away as if I were hot to the touch. "We have a big program." She turned and marched away, her gold sequins shimmering like distress flares. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Well played," a voice murmured behind me. I turned to see Celeste Marlowe. She looked regal in a navy velvet suit, holding a glass of red wine. She was flanked by two other people, a man with sharp glasses and a woman with graying hair and a kind, intelligent face. "Celeste," I said. "Ruby, let me introduce you." Celeste said, "This is Dr. Simone Adler and Jonah Klein. They are fellow board members." "Doctor?" Adler stepped forward. She didn't smile socially. She looked at me with clinical curiosity. "Mrs. Ross, doctor," Adler said. "Celeste tells us you have had an interesting experience with the invitation protocols this year." I hesitated. I didn't want to gossip. "I am just happy to support the fund." I said carefully. Jonah Klein stepped in. He had a lawyer's demeanor, quiet, observant. "Mrs. Ross, we are not asking for gossip," he said. "We are asking for verification. Did you receive a communication stating that the No Children policy was a new security measure implemented for this year?" I looked at Celeste. She gave me a barely perceptible nod. "Yes," I said. "I have an email from the event coordinator stating that the policy was requested by the chairwoman for this year only. To ensure a streamlined donor environment, Jonah and Dr. Adler exchanged a look. It was a look of confirmation, a look that said, "We were right. Thank you." Jonah said, "That is very helpful." They didn't explain further. They didn't need to. They turned and moved into the crowd. Not to mingle, but to observe. They were sharks circling a leaking boat. Celeste stayed with me for a moment. "The payment page is generic." I whispered to her, "It goes to Hale Events Processing." Celeste's eyes narrowed. "I know," she said softly. "We just tried to run a test donation. It didn't generate a tax receipt." She took a sip of her wine. "Go find your seat, Ruby, and watch the stage. The timeline is accelerating." I walked toward the back of the room, weaving through the tables. The room was filling up now. 500 guests in tuxedos and gowns, laughing, drinking, unaware that the floor beneath them was rotting. I found table 29. It was exactly where I expected it to be, pushed up against a velvet rope that separated the ballroom from the catering corridor. Every time a waiter burst through the double doors with a tray of salads, a gust of kitchen air ruffled my napkins. There were 8 other people at the table. They were mostly distant relatives or vendors who had been given pity invites. They looked bored. I sat down, placing my clutch on the table. "Where is Ethan?" I wondered. I scanned the room. I saw the back of his head near the front, near table 1. He was talking to his father. Graham Ross looked red-faced and jovial, holding a scotch. Ethan looked stiff. Then I saw Vanessa approach them. She didn't glide this time. She stormed. She looked frantic. She grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him away from his father. I couldn't hear them, but I could see them. I saw Vanessa gesturing wildly. I saw her point toward the back of the room, toward me. I saw her mouth moving fast, her face contorted in a snarl that looked nothing like the polished hostess she pretended to be. Ethan looked confused. He pulled his arm away. I stood up. I needed to know. I walked quietly along the perimeter of the room, staying in the shadows, moving closer to where they stood near the stage stairs. Cannot have her wandering around talking to the board, Vanessa was hissing. Her voice was a harsh whisper that cut through the ambient noise. She is just talking to people. Vanessa, Ethan said. She is allowed to talk. She is poisoning them, Vanessa snapped. She is telling them about the kids. She is playing the victim. Look at her. Ethan. She is unstable. She is obsessed with ruining this night because she is jealous that I am the one in the spotlight. You need to control her. Ethan froze. He looked at his sister. He looked at the manic glitter in her eyes, the sweat beading on her upper lip. Unstable? Ethan repeated. He sounded baffled. Vanessa. She is sitting at the table you assigned her. She hasn't raised her voice once. She is the calmest person in this room. She is plotting, Vanessa shrieked, though she tried to keep the volume down. She is looking for ways to humiliate me. Ethan took a step back. It was a small movement, but it was monumental. He was seeing it, finally, after 30 years of excuses, after a lifetime of, that is just how she is. He was seeing the naked, ugly paranoia underneath. He looked past her, scanning the room until his eyes locked with mine. I was standing 20 feet away, near a pillar. I didn't look angry. I didn't look crazy. I just looked at him. Vanessa followed his gaze. She saw me. Her face twisted. Go sit down, she hissed at me, forgetting herself entirely. Ethan turned back to his sister. His face had gone cold. Do not talk to my wife like that, he said. Vanessa recoiled as if he had slapped her. Excuse me? I said. Do not talk to her like that, Ethan said, his voice low and shaking with a suppressed rage. She is not a child, and she is certainly not the one who looks unstable right now. Vanessa opened her mouth to scream, but then a chime sounded over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Dinner is about to be served. Vanessa snapped her mouth shut. She smoothed her dress, her mask slamming back into place with terrifying speed. We will talk about this later. She spat at Ethan. Just make sure she stays away from the microphone. She turned and marched up the stairs to the stage. Ethan stood there for a moment, looking at the empty space where she had been. He looked like a man waking up from a long, bad dream. He walked over to me. He looked exhausted. I am sorry, he said. I know, I said. He looked at table 1, where his parents were sitting. Then he looked at table 29 in the shadowy corner. I am sitting with you, he said. Ethan, your parents. I do not care, he said. I am sitting with my wife. He took my hand. His grip was firm. We walked together to the back of the room as we sat down at the table by the kitchen door. The lights dimmed. The spotlight hit the stage. Vanessa walked out to the podium. The applause was polite, but thin. Welcome, friends, to the Harbor Light Gala, she crooned into the microphone. Tonight is about legacy. It is about truth. I watched her from the darkness. She was talking about truth while standing under a misspelled banner, raising money for a black hole, having banned 2 innocent children to protect a lie. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I looked at my phone. I had a text from Tessa. Photo attachment. Leo and Maya grinning, faces covered in pizza sauce, holding a giant stuffed neon sloth. Caption. We won the jackpot. Best night ever. I smiled. They had won. They were happy. I looked back at the stage. Vanessa was launching into her speech. Her hands were gripping the podium so hard her knuckles were white. She was trembling. Beside me, Ethan poured a glass of wine and downed it in one swallow. The room felt brittle. The air was charged with static. It wasn't the excitement of charity. It was the tension of a wire pulled too tight. Then, I saw movement near the side of the stage. Celeste Marlowe, Dr. Adler, and Jonah Klein were standing there. They weren't clapping. They were holding a folder. They were waiting. Vanessa paused for dramatic effect. "And now," she said, her voice soaring, "I would like to invite our platinum sponsor representative to the stage to announce a historic gift." Silence. No one moved. Vanessa looked toward the wings. I said, "Please welcome our friends from Vantage Bank," she said, a nervous laugh bubbling up. Nothing happened. From my seat in the corner, I saw Nolan Red, the man who had called me weeks ago, sitting at table 5. He wasn't moving toward the stage. He was looking at his phone, shaking his head. Vanessa's smile froze. Something was wrong, and everyone in the room knew it. The performance was cracking. I reached out and took Ethan's hand. "Watch," I whispered. The lesson was about to begin. The silence that followed Vanessa's introduction of Vantage Bank was not empty. It was heavy, pressing down on the room like a physical weight. The spotlight swept across the crowd, searching for a representative who was not moving. I sat at table 29, my hands folded in my lap, watching the scene unfold with the detached clarity of a witness at a traffic accident. Vanessa stood at the podium, her smile fixed in a rictus of bright, terrified anticipation. She laughed, a high, nervous sound that echoed off the glass walls. "Perhaps our friends from Vantage are being shy," she joked, gripping the sides of the podium, "or maybe they are just enjoying the wine too much." She waited for the audience to chuckle. A few people offered polite, confused titters, but the majority of the room remained dead silent. Then, a chair scraped loudly against the floor. It was not Nolan Red. It was a man sitting at a table near the front, a representative from a regional insurance firm whose logo was also displayed on the banner behind Vanessa. He stood up, adjusting his tie. He did not look shy. He looked irritated. "Mrs. Hale," he said, his voice carrying clearly without a microphone. Vanessa squinted against the glare of the spotlight. "Yes? Is that Mr. Henderson?" "It is," the man said. "I am sorry to interrupt the flow of the evening, but seeing as you are acknowledging sponsors, I have a question. My company, Henderson Mutual, is listed as a gold partner on the screen behind you." Vanessa beamed, though I could see her neck muscles straining. "Yes, and we are so grateful for your support." "Arthur, the problem, Mr. Henderson continued, his tone flattening, "is that we did not sign a gold partner agreement this year. We declined the package 3 weeks ago because we were told the funds were being allocated to the Building Capital campaign, not the general fund. Yet, I see our logo up there, and I see it on the program." A ripple of murmuring moved through the room like a gust of wind over a wheat field. Vanessa's smile did not falter, but her eyes went wide and vacant. She waved a hand dismissively, the sequins on her dress flashing. "Oh, Arthur," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It must be a printing error. We can certainly clear up the paperwork on Monday. Let us not bore the guests with administration tonight." She tried to pivot back to the script, but the damage was done. Mr. Henderson sat down slowly, but he did not look satisfied, and now every other sponsor in the room was looking at the banner, squinting at their own logos, wondering what exactly they had signed up for. I looked at Ethan. He was staring at his sister, his face pale. "She is lying," he whispered. I did not say anything. I did not have to. The tension in the room began to curdle. The air of exclusivity that Vanessa had worked so hard to curate was dissolving, replaced by a low-grade anxiety. People began to talk, and when people in Seabridge talk, they do not talk about the weather. They talk about what is wrong. I watched the conversation shift. It started at the table next to us. A woman in a red dress leaned in to whisper to her neighbor. "Did you hear about the Ross kids?" she asked. The neighbor shook her head. "No. What happened?" "Banned," the woman in red whispered. "Vanessa banned them. I heard she told the mother they were too pretty." The neighbor pulled back, looking scandalized. "You are joking. That is a thing people say?" "Apparently," the woman in red said, glancing over her shoulder at me. "She said they were a distraction. Can you imagine? Being so insecure that you ban a 6-year-old?" The rumor caught fire. It traveled from table to table, jumping gaps like a spark. I could see heads turning in my direction. I could see the looks of pity, confusion, and then, inevitably, judgment directed back at the stage. Vanessa had wanted to control the narrative. She had wanted to present a sleek, professional front where children were messy distractions. Instead, she had created a narrative where she was a villain in a grim fairy tale, the jealous queen terrified of the youth. A waiter came by to refill our water glasses. He was young, flustered, and clearly overwhelmed by the negativity radiating from the guests. I smiled at him. "Thank you," I said. "You are doing a wonderful job in a difficult room." He looked at me, surprised by the kindness. "Thank you, ma'am," he murmured. "It is intense tonight." At table 4, I saw Kendall Pierce trying to do damage control. She was moving between clusters of guests, her smile tight. I could read her lips as she spoke to a frown-faced donor. "Oh, it is just venue policy," Kendall was saying, gesturing vaguely toward the ceiling. "The glasshouse has strict insurance rules about minors." Vanessa was just following the code. It was a lie, and it was a lazy one. I watched Lila Fenwick, the coordinator, standing near the bar. She was being cornered by Dr. Simone Adler. Lila looked like she wanted to melt into the floorboards. "Doctor?" Adler was asking her something. Lila shook her head. "Doctor," Adler pressed. Lila looked at Vanessa on stage, then back at Dr. Adler. She nodded. I knew what that nod meant. Lila had just confirmed that there was no venue policy. She had just confirmed that the order came from the top. The dominoes were falling. At my table, a woman named Beatrice, who owned a local bakery, leaned across the centerpiece. "Ruby," she said softly, "is it true? About why Maya and Leo aren't here?" I looked at Beatrice. I could have unleashed everything right then. I could have told her about the phone call, the insults, the triangular manipulation. It would have felt good. It would have been cathartic. But Celeste's advice rang in my ears. Do not confront her. Let her contradictions do the work. I took a sip of water. "We are just here to support the Harbor Light Fund." "Beatrice," I said gently. Vanessa felt strongly that the event should be focused on the donors this year. I respected her wishes as the hostess. Beatrice looked at me. She heard what I didn't say. She heard the grace in my refusal to complain. She looked from me, sitting in the back by the kitchen, calm and dignified, to Vanessa, who was now sweating under the lights, frantically trying to get the auctioneer's microphone to work. "You are a better woman than I am," Beatrice said, shaking her head. "If my sister-in-law did that, I would have flipped a table." I smiled. "The mission is what matters," I said. Beatrice nodded, but her expression was hard. She turned to her husband and whispered something. He looked at Vanessa with narrowed eyes. I had won Beatrice, and through her, I would win the bakery crowd. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to see Celeste Marlowe. She was not smiling. Her face was set in a mask of grim determination. "Ruby," she said, "please come with me." "Is everything okay?" I asked, though I knew it wasn't. "We are convening an emergency executive session," Celeste said, "in the green room. Now." She looked at Ethan. "You too, Ethan." Ethan looked at me. He looked terrified, but he stood up. We followed Celeste through the maze of tables. The room had grown loud, the hum of gossip overpowering the string quartet. As we passed table 1, I saw Graham Ross staring at us. He looked angry, but also confused. He started to stand up, but Celeste shot him a look that pinned him to his chair. "Not now, Graham," she said. We walked out of the ballroom and down a carpeted hallway to a small conference room used for bridal parties. Inside, the air was cool and quiet. Dr. Simone Adler was there. Jonah Klein was there. 2 other board members I recognized, a retired judge and the CEO of the hospital, were standing by the window. They looked like a jury. "Please, sit down," Jonah said. I sat at the mahogany table. I placed my clutch in front of me. Ethan sat next to me, his knee bouncing nervously. "Mrs. Ross," Jonah began. He was the treasurer, and he did not waste time. We have a situation that is spiraling out of control. We have sponsors claiming fraud. We have vendors threatening to walk out. And we have a disturbing amount of chatter regarding the exclusion of your children, which seems to be undermining the credibility of the organization's family-focused mission." He paused, looking at me over his glasses. "We need to know the truth," he said. "Vanessa is claiming that the no children policy was a security mandate from the board. Is that your understanding?" I reached into my clutch. I pulled out the folded email from Lila Fenwick. I smoothed it out on the table and slid it toward Jonah. "This is the correspondence I received from the event coordinator," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It states that the policy was requested by Vanessa personally on August 29th, for this year only." Jonah picked up the paper. He read it. He passed it to Dr. Adler. "Doctor." Adler read it and closed her eyes for a second. "This year only." She repeated, "Personal request. I have also kept a timeline," I said, opening the small notebook I had brought. "On August 29th, Vanessa sent me a text message stating that my children were too pretty and would draw the wrong kind of attention. She stated that their presence would distract from the fundraising." There was a silence in the room, a profound, embarrassed silence. "Too pretty." The retired judge grunted. "Good Lord." She also updated the etiquette guide the following day. I continued, "And when I arrived tonight, security attempted to bar me from the VIP entrance based on a flag attached to my name. Lila Fenwick had to override it." "And the seating?" Celeste asked quietly. "Table 29, I said, "by the kitchen." "Doctor." Adler looked at the seating chart she had spread out on the table. "She put the founder's son and daughter-in-law at table 29. She murmured, "It is petty. It is remarkably, destructively petty." Jonah looked at me. "Mrs. Ross, do you believe this personal animosity is affecting her judgment regarding the financial management of the gala?" I looked at Ethan. He was staring at his hands. "I believe," I said carefully, "that Vanessa is under a great deal of pressure to prove her worth to this board. I believe she views any variable she cannot control as a threat. My children were a variable. The sponsors were a variable. She tried to edit reality to fit a narrative where she was successful. But you cannot edit a bank balance." Ethan made a sound. It was a sharp intake of breath. "Ethan?" Celeste asked. "Do you have anything to add?" Ethan looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. He looked at the board members, people he had known his whole life, people who respected his father. I stood on the stairs. Ethan said, his voice raspy, "About an hour ago." "Go on," Jonah said. "She grabbed me." Ethan said, "She was hysterical. She pointed at Ruby. Ruby was just standing there. She wasn't doing anything. But Vanessa, she looked at me and said, Ruby was unstable. She said Ruby was plotting against her. She demanded I control my wife." He paused, swallowing hard. "She looked me in the eye and lied to me." Ethan said, "She tried to make me think my wife was crazy because she was terrified of being exposed. I have spent my whole life defending my sister. I have spent my whole life saying she is just misunderstood. But tonight," he looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw total clarity in his eyes. "Tonight, I watched her try to destroy Ruby's reputation just to cover her own tracks." Ethan said, "It is not a misunderstanding. It is malice." The room was silent again. Ethan's testimony hung in the air, heavy and irrevocable. He had broken the family code. He had chosen truth over blood. Jonah Klein stood up. "Thank you, Ethan." "That was not easy." He turned to the group. "We cannot let her go back to that microphone," Jonah said. "We have Henderson Mutual threatening a lawsuit. We have the Vantage issue. We have the staff wages. If she solicits donations on stage right now, and those donations go into a processing account that isn't properly vetted, we are liable for wire fraud. We need to pull the plug." "Doctor," Adler said, "not the whole event. We can't cause a riot, but we need to stop the fundraising ask. We need to initiate an administrative pause." "Agreed," the judge said. Celeste nodded. "I will go tell her." Celeste said, "I will come with you," Jonah said. They stood up. "You should come too." Ruby, Celeste said, you are the witness. And frankly, she is going to try to blame this on you anyway. You might as well be there to defend yourself. We walked out of the green room. The hallway felt longer this time. We could hear the muffled sound of applause from the ballroom. Vanessa was finishing up the auction. We intercepted her just as she was walking off the stage, heading toward the backstage dressing area to change for the finale. She looked exhilarated. Her face was flushed, her eyes bright with adrenaline. She thought she was pulling it off. She thought the applause meant she was safe. Then she saw us. She saw Celeste. She saw Jonah, and then she saw me, standing next to Ethan. Her smile vanished. What is this? She asked, wiping sweat from her forehead. Why aren't you in your seats? The big announcement is next. Vanessa, Jonah said, stepping forward. We need to talk. Not now. Jonah, Vanessa snapped, trying to brush past him. I have 5 minutes to change. The Vantage announcement is the climax. There will be no Vantage announcement, Jonah said calmly. Vanessa froze. She turned slowly. Excuse me? We know about Henderson Mutual, Jonah said. We know about the missing contracts. We know about the payment portal. And we know about the treatment of the Ross family. Vanessa's eyes darted to me. You, she hissed. She lunged toward me, her finger pointing like a weapon. You did this, she screamed. You couldn't just stay home. You couldn't just follow the rules. You had to come here and poison them. You have been whispering to them all night, haven't you? Sabotage. Ethan stepped in front of me, blocking her path. Stop it. Vanessa, he said, get out of my way. Ethan, Vanessa shrieked. She is a snake. She is jealous because I am the one on stage. She is trying to ruin my night because her brats weren't invited. Vanessa, Celeste's voice cracked like a whip. Vanessa stopped, panting. Ruby did not tell us about the contracts. Celeste said coldly, the sponsors did. Ruby did not tell us about the payment portal. We found it. The only thing Ruby did was provide the written proof that you have been lying to your own family and abusing your power as chair to settle petty scores. I stepped out from behind Ethan. I looked at my sister-in-law. I didn't do anything. Vanessa, I said quietly. You are a liar, she spat. I sat in the back. I said, I stayed quiet. I smiled at your donors. I didn't make a scene. I didn't complain about the table. I let you be the star. Vanessa, I took a step closer, but you couldn't leave it alone. I said, you had to ban the kids. You had to flag me at the door. You had to insult me to my husband. You built this trap. Vanessa, all I did was refuse to walk into it. She stared at me, her chest heaving. She looked trapped, cornered, and dangerous. You don't understand, she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and terror. I need this money. I need this night to work. You don't know what is at stake. We know exactly what is at stake, Jonah said. The reputation of the Harbor Light Fund, which is why the board has voted to suspend your authority as chair. Effective immediately. Vanessa looked at him as if he had spoken in a foreign language. Suspend? She repeated. You cannot suspend me. I am the host. I am the face of this event. Not anymore. Doctor, Adler said, Lila will handle the closing remarks. You are to step away from the program. We will discuss the financial discrepancies on Monday with legal counsel. Vanessa laughed. It was a jagged, hysterical sound. You think Lila can close this? She mocked. Lila is an idiot. The donors are here for me. They are here for the Hale brand. She turned and looked toward the curtain that led to the stage. Beyond it, 500 people were waiting. The applause had died down. The room was waiting for the finale. I am going out there, Vanessa said, her eyes glazing over with a terrifying resolve. I am going to make the announcement. I am going to get the pledges. And when I raise $1 million tonight, you will all be begging for my forgiveness. Vanessa. No, Ethan said, reaching for her arm. She shook him off with a strength I didn't know she had. Do not touch me, she screamed. She smoothed her sequins. She fixed her hair. She composed her face into a mask of triumph, even as the tears began to streak her foundation. Watch me, she hissed at me. "Watch me fix this." She turned and marched toward the stage stairs. Jonah reached for his phone. "Security," he said into the receiver. "We have a situation at the stage right." Celeste looked at me. "She is going to crash," Celeste said softly. I watched Vanessa's retreating back. She looked small against the vast black curtain. She was marching toward a cliff, convinced she could fly. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I felt a profound, aching sadness. She was so convinced that the image was the only thing that mattered that she was willing to destroy everything: her family, her reputation, her integrity, just to keep the spotlight on for 5 more minutes. "Let her go," I said. We followed her to the wings of the stage. Vanessa burst through the curtain. The spotlight hit her. She threw her arms wide. "And now," she shouted, her voice cracking slightly, "the moment you have all been waiting for." The room went silent, but it wasn't an expectant silence. It was a confused silence. They could see her makeup running. They could see the wild look in her eyes. They could see that something was terribly, irrevocably wrong. I stood in the shadows, holding Ethan's hand. The lesson was no longer private. It was about to become very, very public. The spotlight was a physical thing, a cone of blinding white heat that isolated Vanessa Hale from the rest of the world. From where I stood in the wings, holding Ethan's hand, she looked like a specimen pinned to a board. She was glittering in her gold sequins, her arms raised in a pose of triumphant welcome. But the silence that stretched out before her was not the silence of awe. It was the silence of a room holding its breath, waiting for the crash. Vanessa gripped the microphone. Her knuckles were white. "We are so blessed," she announced, her voice booming through the speakers with a forced, manic cheer. "We are so blessed to have partners like Vantage Bank who understand the vision of the Harbor Light Fund. Tonight, I am thrilled to announce a pledge that will change the trajectory of our community forever. A pledge of $100,000. She paused. She looked toward the table where Nolan Red, the Vantage representative, was sitting. She gestured with a frantic, open palm, inviting him to stand, to clap, to validate her lie. Nolan did not stand. He stared at his tablecloth, his face a mask of mortification. The applause did not come. Instead, a low murmur began to ripple through the room, the sound of 500 people realizing simultaneously that the emperor had no clothes. Vanessa laughed. A sharp, brittle sound. "It seems our friends are feeling modest," she chirped, sweat visible on her brow even from 20 feet away. "Well, no matter. We have the paperwork. We have the commitment, and we have the future." She was about to pivot to the next item, to bulldoze through the awkwardness with sheer force of will. When movement caught my eye, Dr. Simone Adler was walking up the stairs to the stage. She moved with the precise, terrifying calm of a surgeon entering an operating theater. She did not rush. She did not look angry. She looked like the personification of institutional order. Vanessa saw her coming. Her smile faltered, then froze. "Simone?" she said into the microphone, her voice echoing. "We are in the middle of the appeal, Doctor." Adler did not stop until she reached the podium. She did not wrestle for the microphone. She simply stood next to Vanessa, her presence so commanding that Vanessa instinctively took a half step back. "Doctor?" Adler leaned into the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, please forgive the interruption." "Doctor," Adler said. Her voice was cool, measured, and stripped of all emotion. "Before we proceed with the fundraising totals, the Board of Directors requires a brief moment for an administrative clarification." "Clarification?" Vanessa hissed. Off mic, but loud enough for the front tables to hear. "What are you doing?" "Doctor?" Adler ignored her. She looked out at the sea of faces, the donors, the sponsors, the confused waitstaff. "It has come to the attention of the board." "Doctor," Adler continued, "that certain sponsor materials displayed this evening, specifically regarding Henderson Mutual and Vantage Bank, were posted without finalized written approvals. In the interest of full transparency and compliance with our charter, We are placing a temporary hold on all major pledges until these discrepancies are reviewed by our legal team. The words landed like stones dropped into a deep well. Discrepancies. Legal team. Hold. In the world of high society charity, these were not just words. They were accusations. They were a polite way of saying fraud. The room erupted. The murmuring turned into a roar of conversation. People turned to look at the misspelled banners. Phones were pulled out. I saw Arthur Henderson nodding grimly at his table. Vanessa looked as if she had been slapped. She grabbed the microphone stand. "This is ridiculous," she shouted, her voice shrill and distorted by the feedback. "It is just a paperwork delay. The money is there. The board is just being bureaucratic. We are here for the children." She was flailing. She was trying to drag the conversation back to the emotional hook, hoping that sentiment would override the forensic accounting being done in real time by the audience. But the audience was no longer listening to her melody. They were listening to the discord. From the center of the room, a voice rang out. It was Beatrice, the bakery owner who I had spoken to earlier. She stood up, her face flushed but determined. "Since we are clarifying things," Beatrice called out, her voice cutting through the noise. "Can we also clarify the rules about the guests?" Vanessa squinted into the dark. "What? We heard you created special rules this year," Beatrice said. "We heard you banned your own niece and nephew because they were too pretty. Is that true?" The question hung in the air. Absurd and devastating. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. She looked at the crowd. She saw hundreds of eyes staring back at her, not with admiration, but with a mixture of confusion and distaste. "I did no such thing," Vanessa stammered, but she couldn't help herself. The narcissist in her, the part that believed she was the arbiter of all things aesthetic, rose to the surface. "I simply instituted a policy to protect the event from distractions," she snapped, leaning over the podium. "This is a serious fundraiser. We cannot have the evening turned into a pageant. When they are paraded around to draw focus, it cheapens the mission. I made a judgment call to keep the focus on the donors, not on some family spectacle." A gasp went through the room. She had said it. She had tried to dress it up in the language of mission, but the venom was undeniable. She had just admitted that she viewed children, her own family, as competition. She had admitted that their beauty was an offense to her stage. I saw the CEO of the hospital turn to his wife and shake his head in disgust. I saw Nolan Red cover his eyes. Vanessa realized. Too late. What she had done. She tried to backtrack. For safety, she added quickly. For security. But the damage was absolute. She had revealed the ugliness behind the sequins. Then, Celeste Marlowe stepped out from the wings. She did not walk to the podium. She stood at the edge of the stage, bathed in the spillover light. She held a microphone she had taken from the tech crew. "There is no security threat," Celeste stated. Her voice was not loud, but it had the weight of a gavel. Vanessa whipped around. "Celeste, stay out of this." Celeste looked at the audience. "I have reviewed the correspondence," Celeste said calmly. The exclusion of the Ross children was not a board decision. It was not a venue policy. It was a selective rule applied to 2 specific children based solely on their physical appearance. She paused, letting that sink in. "The Harbor Light Fund is dedicated to the welfare of families," Celeste continued. "To discriminate against a child because they are too pretty, to use a child's natural appearance as a justification for exclusion, is not just petty, it is an ethical failure. It contradicts everything this organization stands for. We do not weaponize rules to manage personal insecurities." Vanessa looked wild. She looked from Celeste to Dr. Adler to the audience. "I am the chair," she shrieked. "I made the rules. I did it for you. I did it so you would look at the stage." She was unraveling. The polished socialite was gone, replaced by a terrified, angry woman screaming at a room full of people she desperately wanted to impress. It was time. I felt Ethan release my hand. He didn't look at me. He looked at the stage. He walked out from the wings, stepping into the light. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo. He was in a dark suit, simple and understated. He didn't walk to the microphone. He walked to me. I hadn't realized I had stepped forward, drawn by the gravity of the moment. I was standing just visible at the edge of the curtain. Ethan walked over to me. He put his arm around my waist. He pulled me close. It was a small gesture. In any other context, it would have been nothing. But in that room, in front of the people who knew the Hale-Ross dynamic, it was a declaration of war. For 30 years, the Ross family had stood by Vanessa. They had smoothed her feathers, hidden her mistakes, and let her shine. Now, Ethan Ross was standing with his wife. He looked at his sister on the stage. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, solid and unmoving, with his arm around the unstable woman she had tried to erase. The room saw it. The whispers stopped. The judgment was final. "Doctor?" Adler leaned into the podium mic again, in light of the financial discrepancies and the breach of our ethical standards. "The board is calling for an immediate vote," she said. "Right there, on the stage." The 4 board members raised their hands. "Motion to appoint Lila Fenwick as interim event operations lead for the remainder of the evening." "Doctor," Adler said, "and to request that Mrs. Hale recuse herself from the stage pending a formal inquiry. All those in favor?" 4 hands went up. "Celeste, Doctor, Adler, Jonah Klein, and the judge. Motion carries." "Doctor," Adler said. She turned to Vanessa. "Vanessa," she said quietly. Away from the mic but loud enough for us to hear in the wings. "Please step down." Vanessa stared at them. She was shaking so hard the sequins were vibrating, casting frantic little sparkles of light all over the stage. "You cannot do this to me," she whispered. "This is my night. I built this. Please, Vanessa." "Doctor," Adler said, "do not make us call security." Vanessa looked at the audience one last time. She was looking for a savior. She looked at table 1. She looked at her father. Graham Ross was sitting with his head bowed, looking at his hands. He could not look at her. The fight went out of her. She slumped, her posture collapsing as if the strings holding her up had been cut. 2 security guards, the same ones who had stopped me at the door, walked onto the stage. They were gentle. They didn't grab her. One of them simply gestured toward the stairs. "Mrs. Hale," the guard said. "This way, please." Vanessa let out a sob, a raw, ugly sound that was picked up by the microphone before Doctor. Adler switched it off. She turned and walked off the stage. She didn't look at the audience. She walked down the stairs, past the stunned donors, and toward the side exit. As she passed the wings, she saw me. She stopped. Her mascara was running in black streaks down her face. Her eyes were red and hollow. I looked at her. I didn't feel the rush of victory I had expected. I didn't feel the urge to smile or gloat. I felt a heavy, dull ache in my chest. It is a tragedy to watch someone shatter, even if they handed you the hammer. She looked at Ethan, then at me. She opened her mouth to say something, but no sound came out. "Come on, ma'am," the security guard said softly. She disappeared through the side doors, into the cool night air, on stage. Lila Fenwick walked to the podium. She looked terrified, but she took a deep breath. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice shaking only slightly, "dessert will be served in the atrium. Thank you for your patience as we recalibrate." The room exhaled. I turned to Ethan. "I need to go," I said. He nodded. "Go." "I will handle my parents." I walked out the side door, following the path Vanessa had taken. I found her in the parking lot. She was leaning against the side of her Mercedes, her forehead pressed against the cold glass of the window. She was weeping, her shoulders heaving with the force of it. The parking lot was dark, lit only by the distant street lamps. The ocean wind whipped around us, cold and biting. "Vanessa," I said. She spun around. Her face was a ruin. "Are you happy?" She choked out. "Are you happy now? You won. Everyone knows. I am a fraud. I am a monster. Is that what you wanted?" I walked closer to her, stopping a few feet away. I never wanted to win. Vanessa, I said, I just wanted my children to be treated like people. She laughed. A wet, gasping sound. Your children. She spat. Your perfect children. Do you know what it is like? Do you have any idea what it is like to look at them and see everything you are losing? She slid down the side of the car until she was sitting on the asphalt, her gold dress pooling around her like oil. I am 45 years old. Ruby, she whispered, we are broke. The business is underwater. I needed this seat on the board to get the loan connections. I needed the status. And then I look at you, and you have the happy marriage. You have the easy life, and you have those kids, those beautiful, perfect kids who walk into a room and everyone smiles. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. I felt invisible. She said, when they are around, I feel invisible. I just wanted one night where I didn't have to compete with a 6-year-old and lose. I panicked. I panicked. I looked down at her. I saw the fear. I saw the crushing weight of the facade she had been maintaining for years. She was drowning, and she had tried to stand on my children's heads to keep herself above water. I felt a flash of empathy. It was real. I knew what it was like to feel insecure. I knew what it was like to worry about money. But then I remembered the text message. Too pretty. I remembered the security flag. I remembered the way she had tried to gaslight Ethan. Understanding her pain did not mean accepting her cruelty. You were drowning, Vanessa, I said softly. And I am sorry for that. I am sorry you felt so desperate. I crouched down so I was eye level with her. But you do not get to set my children on fire to keep yourself warm. I said, you do not get to break their confidence just because yours is cracking. That is not panic. That is abuse. Vanessa flinched. What happens now? She whispered. That is up to the board. I said, and it is up to the family. But as for me, I stood up. I smoothed my dress. I'm going home to my kids. I turned and walked away. Ruby! She called after me, her voice cracking. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I left her sitting on the asphalt in her ruined gold dress, alone with the truth she had tried so hard to outrun. I drove to the arcade. The neon lights of the boardwalk were a jarring contrast to the elegant gloom of the glass house. The air smelled of popcorn and ozone. I walked inside. It was noisy, chaotic, and wonderful. I found them in the back, by the skee-ball machines. Tessa was wearing a pair of giant novelty sunglasses. Leo was holding a stuffed sloth that was almost as big as he was. Maya was eating a slice of pizza with a level of concentration that was truly impressive. Mom! Leo shouted when he saw me. He ran over, slamming into my legs. I caught him, burying my face in his sticky pizza-scented hair. Did you win? He asked, looking up at me with those big, dangerous eyes. I smiled. I felt lighter than I had in months. The tension, the strategy, the anger, it was all gone, dissolved by the noise of the arcade. Yeah, buddy, I said. I won. Did you get a prize? Maya asked. Wandering over, I looked at them, my prize, my beautiful, chaotic, uncontrollable variables. I sure did. I said, I got the best prize. I got to leave early. We drove home with the windows down, singing along to the radio. The gala felt like a million miles away. The scandal, the votes, the ruined reputation of Vanessa Hale. It was all just noise in the rearview mirror. When we got home, I helped them into their pajamas. I tucked Leo in first, placing the giant sloth next to him. Mom? He asked sleepily. Yeah? Are we still too pretty? My heart stopped for a second. He had heard. Of course he had heard. Kids always hear. I sat down on the edge of the bed. I brushed the hair off his forehead. You know what you are? I asked. He shook his head. You are Leo. I said, you are kind. You are smart. You are important. And you are loved. Those are the only words that matter, okay? Okay, he whispered. I went into Maya's room. She was already asleep, clutching a small plastic ring she had won from a claw machine. I stood in the doorway, watching her breathe. Vanessa had been right about one thing. They were beautiful, but she had been wrong about why. They weren't beautiful because of their genetics or their eyelashes. They were beautiful because they were innocent. They were beautiful because they hadn't yet learned to be cruel. I went downstairs. I poured a glass of water. I sat in the dark living room and listened to the house settle. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Ethan. I am staying at my parents' tonight. Dad is not doing well. Vanessa is in the hospital. Sedated, exhaustion. They are saying, I love you. You were right. About everything. I stared at the screen. In the hospital. Sedated. The final escape. I put the phone down. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired. But it was a clean tired. It was the exhaustion of someone who has cleaned a very dirty room and can finally close the door. I thought about the future. There would be investigations. There would be family meetings. There would be awkward holidays and apologies that might never feel sincere. But that was for tomorrow. Tonight, my children were sleeping. Tonight, the truth was out. Tonight, nobody was hiding in the corner. I turned off the lamp and walked upstairs, into the quiet dark, choosing the peace of my own home over the applause of any crowd. Thank you so much for listening to SIL banned my kids for being too pretty. Guests taught her a lesson. I hope you found satisfaction in Ruby's journey from silence to strength. If you enjoyed this story, I would love to hear from you. Please comment below and tell me where you are listening from. I am always amazed to see how far these stories travel. Do you think Ruby should forgive Vanessa? Or was the betrayal too deep? Share your thoughts in English in the comments. And please, make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories so you never miss a moment of the drama. Until next time, remember, the best revenge is always the truth.